All right. Hello and welcome to episode 263 of Together BHA. Random Monday lunchtime to the Sunday game being the way it was, and Man City Arsenal probably would have eaten into a lot of our interaction numbers. Not that this is probably going to be any better being a random Monday lunchtime. Everyone is asleep on the East Coast and the West Coast, and everyone in the UK is probably at work. But Robin, how are you doing?
All good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, not bad at all. It's been a long week, but it's over now. So I had the in-laws visiting all week
Oh wow.
while also working, obviously having to work still. And then I got sick, which is not great. Like I still feel rough. And then obviously the drive down to Forest yesterday in the pouring rain for like all day. So it's been a horrible time, really.
Good.
Stephen, nice to see you. I think you may be our only person hopping in today, but we appreciate the loyalty. So let's get kicked off with some midweek football, shall we? Brighton played Wolves at home. Last time we played them was a cup tie as well, where we, was probably the most pivotal week under De Zerbi in his entire tenure, with crashing out of the Europa League, the FA Cup, and losing in the Premier League, which kind of just derailed everything back to back over the course of about 10 days. Wolves at home, Gary O'Neill seems to have our number a little bit. How were you feeling coming into this, especially when you saw the lineup? Stealing goal, Estepinian, Igor, Webster, Hinchelwood, Minty, Baleba, Moda, Adingra, and Ciso Ferguson. Quite a few names to talk about there, isn't there?
Yeah, I thought it was a good mix. It's quite a good balance, getting some minutes for people that we need minutes from. When I saw their team as well, like they'd rested quite a lot, seemingly had no fit centre-backs. I think one of their centre-backs was on loan at Stockport last season, from what I saw.
He was, yeah.
So yeah, I thought I was expecting us to get through based on the team that we put out and based on the team they put out.
Yeah, I mean, the start was perfect, wasn't it? Within half an hour, 2-0 up. And honestly, like, I don't think there was a single moment in that time where I felt like we were under a lot of danger. Wolves did pull off a couple of shots, don't get me wrong. But there wasn't anything there that made me think, oh boy, we're going end to end here. We're going to be in trouble, which towards the end of the Ipswich game very much felt that way. And we'll talk a little bit about Forest as well. But there was really nothing Wolves offered until the 44th minute, right before half time, where the entire team inexplicably went to sleep. This is something that we've seen towards the end of games quite a bit now, isn't it? Like end of halves, end of games, we've started to fall off. Ironically, then we kind of rectified that in the next game. But what do you make of this formation that we're throwing out there being caught on the break? Because again, it was absolutely what happened again at Wolves, and we'll talk about it at Forest too. The midfield's not tracking back, not keeping hold of their men on the overlap. Like, what do you make of their formation and what Herzler's putting out there, or rather not a formation, because as Herzler's already said, he doesn't like that.
I mean, it's almost like a basketball game, isn't it? It descends into sometimes this back and forth. I think it will work when he's got everybody fit. I think Weaver particularly will be hopefully the engine who can do that kind of third centre half role. Because at the moment, like, we go gung ho to press and win the ball back, and if that doesn't work, then within about 5 seconds we've got like a 4-on-3 or whatever it is, and it's happened in every game. Apart from, I didn't really see it so much in the Everton game, but it's happened in every other game. And yeah, I'm hoping that we get Weaver back fit to play in that role, or somebody else with some pace, because we know that Dunk has form for being caught out on the break. He's not the quickest. So it's back to slightly watching us defend with like hands in front of face occasionally. I'm not a big fan of it at the moment, but it's early days. But it's, we've seen Forest do it. We've seen a second string Wolves do it. We've seen a newly promoted Ipswich do it. It doesn't necessarily hold great signs for when you go and play. You know, obviously Arsenal was all right, but we need to tighten that up slightly.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll have a chance to see what that looks like, won't we? Because we've got Chelsea, Newcastle, and Spurs back to back. And I know that Spurs are not having the greatest start to the year, but they're undoubtedly a quality side going forward, especially. So we'll be able to see how this measures up against the bigger teams. And we've said for quite a while, really, like whenever we play bigger teams, we tend to perform better under De Zerbi and Potter than we do against the lesser sides. Do you think we might see that here, or do you have a little bit of a worry that this may be the style of play and the openness at the back, which was something that under De Zerbi we were horrendous at too as well?
Same
like,
thing.
What does that look like?
You look at the United at home game, right? I mean, they effectively scored 2 goals on the break like that. I know we were saved by Xerxes' sort of moment of madness, but that was the same thing. That was 2 goals, where essentially we were played through pretty quickly. So it is a little bit of a worry at the moment. He's obviously going for this slightly kind of rock and roll attacking that De Zerbi used to do as well. But we just don't have the consistent pace across defence to be able to handle it. I mean, having Purvis back to something that looked like Purvis yesterday, I thought he's getting there in terms of the number of sheer yardage that he's covering is going to be decent. But you can see why there were rumours that we wanted one extra centre half with pace during the back end of the window, because that seems to be the slight problem. I think JP Van Hecker is carrying a lot on his shoulders, I think, defensively, and as well as being the kind of he's playing that quarterback role as well a little bit as well. So a lot is depending on him, and he is quick, but it's sheer volume and numbers, right? Like if you've committed that many people forward and you lose the ball or you don't win the ball back, then we're suddenly in trouble. I know we say this, we haven't lost a game, right? So, I mean, it's like it's framed within that. But I think that's the one area Herzl will probably be looking at, thinking that's where we need to tighten up, because every game it's been the worry, and we've been blessed by teams not having the best finishing. I mean, there was even the one yesterday, right? I mean, it was miles offside, but Chris Wood missed from like 6-7 yards out, right? That's probably
horrendous.
right.
It was.
That's another one where it's like, it's saved by the player before him being offside, but we're having so many of these. I mean, Ipswich, they had that breakaway where they hit the post on the counter as well. So we're being saved by the woodwork and some colossally poor finishing. But that ain't going to be the case against, other teams that we come up against.
Yeah, agreed. Just to jump to that Forest chance for Chris Wood, actually, because it brought up a aspect of the game that I'm coming to really, really despise. And it is this decision to play on when the lino is absolutely sure that the player is offside. Sooner or later, someone is going to get badly hurt. Not necessarily our game, but some game. And the Premier League are going to really regret that if it's a Haaland or a Salah. Because the way that chance played on, there is absolutely every chance that Verbruggen could have been badly injured. Any of the centre halves coming back to try and block the ball could have been badly injured. And Chris Wood could have been badly injured himself with that flashpoint, right? Like we see, like when the keeper's coming out, like, you just don't know what's going to happen, and people get hurt all the time. And if the lino is sure enough to flag afterwards, he should be sure enough to flag prior in those situations, because sooner or later, like, do you not find that dangerous as well? Like, it's asking for trouble for me. And I know we've jumped way ahead into this chance, but we see it every week, and it's one of those things that drives me absolutely bonkers watching football in general. Like, it is asking for trouble.
Like, they put their hands up as well to almost apologize. I think it was that Chris Wood one. The lino actually put his hand up almost to be like, sorry,
because Dunk was losing his shit.
Yeah,
Dunk really was losing his mind.
I mean, I can understand where it's difficult, because I can understand where it's like a really marginal one. Yeah. And obviously they then fall back to go, okay, VAR can decide this if it's really marginal. But a lino's got to be good enough to spot the nuance in it, where like he can see clear daylight, right, between players. Put your flag up. Like, that's just, it's offside, right? I think they have to be clever enough to, I know it's in the heat of the moment, etc., and there's probably ones where it's difficult, but ones where you do see a clear gap where there's no controversy, put your flag up.
I mean, I think if you're confident enough to put your flag up after the whistle's blown, you're confident. You should be confident enough to put it up prior. Like, that's the way it should be. I think. If you're looking at it and you're going like, oh shit, I'm not sure. Like, that, you keep it down. You play on. You let the VAR make the choice. Like, that's what it's there for. If you're sure, like everybody, PGO, PGMOL, whoever should back that lino whenever they flag. Like, because that's. I'd rather that than someone get hurt. It's absolutely bizarre to me.
It is. You're right. I mean, a one-on-one like that, you're exactly right. I mean, Verbruggen could come charging out. You know, he naturally would. It's a one-on-one. He's probably going to come charging out. You know, there's collision. You know, it could be a collision. Concussion, or anything. I mean, even a player can, injure their knee, right, if they're off balance trying to take a shot.
Exactly.
I mean, there's all sorts of like. There's basically any injury that can be suffered on a football pitch could be suffered in that scenario. Yeah, I agree with you. It's bonkers.
What did you make of Evan Ferguson's return? Been a long time coming.
It has. He looks lean.
That hour of Evan Ferguson was a long time coming, wasn't it? Yeah. He
looks lean from what I can see. I think whether he's been in the gym or whether he's just lost a tiny bit of weight. I mean, I don't think anyone suggested he was overweight or anything beforehand, but he does look like he's a bit leaner than he was before. Whether that's just the fact we forget he's only, he's 19, isn't he? I think still. I mean, he's still growing, right? Like, so it makes us think that he hasn't yet finished growing. But he looked lively in that Wolves game. Obviously, he nearly scored one of his kind of trademark, really quick spin and bury it in the bottom corner, which we've seen him roll that out a few times. So he's looking sharp. So it will be good to see. I think they're obviously very carefully managing his minutes, given how long he's been out. Don't think he really had much of an impact yesterday, from what I saw. Don't think he got many touches of the ball, if anything. But
no, he came on 82 minutes, and then we had the red card incident after, and then the referee decided to give 0 added time, which we'll talk about as well. So like, he really didn't have a lot of chances at that point.
He looked good.
We also
very good.
Talking of well managed or gently managed, the return of Matt Weaver as well. Thank goodness is back in the squad. Came on and made a cameo for half an hour against Wolves, and then did the same about half an hour for the Forest game. He's clearly going to be one of those players that we rely on going forward as one of the big boys. But it wasn't either of them who came through and did anything for us in front of goal. It was right winger Ferdy Kadioglu who comes on towards the end of the game. 82 minutes. 3 minutes later, he scores to make it 3-1. Obviously, Tommy Doyle late on, he made it 3-2. And honestly, the scoreline doesn't reflect the performance. If it was 3-0, it would probably look a bit fairer. They were very poor Wolves. What did you make of the Kadioglu on at right wing and the tapping goal for him? Like, it's great seeing all these players starting to come available, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he did the good thing. I mean, he was following up like a proper winger does. It wasn't like this is a fullback filling in on the wing. Like, he knew exactly what he should be doing. Which was really good. It's always good for someone to get a goal, even if it's a slightly kind of scrappy one, to get their confidence going. I say I was a little bit not worried in the Ipswich game, but he looked quite off the pace. I know he ended up against Ipswich. He probably played the best pass of the game, but he looked a little bit off it pace wise in that Ipswich game. So it was good to see him get some more minutes against Wolves. And again, he's another one where they're obviously easing him back in. I know we talked before, we thought that kind of, the October international break will probably be the moment, or after that will be the moment when we start to see something resembling like first choice Hertzler ball and team. So I think they're just taking the opportunity to bed these players in. We haven't even seen Gruder yet, so hopefully
still rehabbing from the sounds of it. So but it sounds like he's he's much closer than he was 3 weeks ago. So that's really good news. Obviously, progression in the cup. The cup draw is this week because of Champions League games clashing with teams that we're playing and all this sort of nonsense. But we will get the draw this week and going on into kind of like the actual business end of the rounds here already. Even though it is only September, we're getting this draw in. Once you get through this first couple of like fodder rounds, which plenty of Premier League teams go out in, right? Because we play second sides a lot. Like we start getting into the point where like a trophy becomes like visible, right? Because a couple of games away.
Is this last 16 now already?
This is going to be the 4th round, so I think it is the 16 or 32. Yeah.
16. So yeah, it's have to see. I mean, well, obviously we've talked about in theory you have the depth of squad to be able to give every competition a go, especially with no Europe this year. So I'd like us to give it a go. And actually, you know, it may well be our best route to Europe might be through one of the cups. So, and obviously, you know, it'd be nice to actually win something of significance. So yeah, good. Always good to get progression through.
Yeah, agreed. The draw is on Wednesday, the 25th. Kickoff set for 8 p.m. UK time, Liverpool, West Ham. Immediately following that will be the draw. So depending on penalty shootouts or any nonsense like that, it'll be about 10:15. So make sure you're checking in on that. Like you said, it is the last 16. I've just double checked. And you've got quite a few names already in. So Stoke, Sheffield Wednesday, Brentford, Southampton, Preston, Palace, Manchester United, Brighton, Tottenham. And then we have games this week: Man City, Watford, Wimbledon, Newcastle, Chelsea, Barrow, Walsall, Leicester, Wickham, Villa, Arsenal, Bolton, Liverpool, West Ham. A lot of the ones that we don't want to see in this round of games this week.
Yeah.
Looks like Wimbledon may have already been postponed today due to flooding.
It has.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. Having living in the Midlands right now, it's horrendous. If it's moved down south whatsoever, everyone's screwed down there too. So I feel their pain. But Forest coming into the game unbeaten, of course. Somebody's could possibly go, and it didn't. It was a draw, 2-2. Live on Sky Sports, Sunday afternoon kickoff. Right before Man City against Arsenal as well. Kind of like a nice little warm-up match, 2 unbeaten teams going head-to-head at the Amex. What did you make of the starting 11 this time around? Verbruggen obviously back, but Estepinian coming back in as a full-time starter. Dunk, Van Heck, Veltman, pretty much standard. Baleba started, Mitoma, Ruta, Pedro not available, only on the bench. Adingra in for Minte, and then Welbeck, of course, leading the line after the start of the season he's had seems pretty obvious. And Jack Hinchelwood being moved into what is supposed to be his real role as a centre midfielder. Weaver on the bench, which is obviously great as well. Good depth there, and obviously we're being sensible and gentle with him as well. And the bench was Weaver, Ferguson, Minte, Pedro, and Ciso, Kadioglu, Steele, Webster, and Igor. That's not a half bad bench, is it? What did you make of that lineup and bench?
Yeah, I think it's probably our strongest bench ever, I'd have thought. I can't imagine we've ever had the depth of that. It was a good lineup. It's good to see Purvis back. It's so good that Verbruggen is the established number one and that we don't have to waste any airtime that we wasted last year talking about this constant rotation with Steele. Yeah, I mean, interesting to see Hinchelwood because has he played? I know he got thrown in for his debut against like Villa, didn't he? That Villa away game where we just got steamrolled. Right, yep. I think it was like Hinchelwood and Gilmore in a 2 up against Villa's 3 of probably Douglas Luiz, John McGinn, and somebody else.
Yeah, it was definitely Luiz.
Yeah. So I was interested to see how he was going to get on because, similar to you, it's always said to be, quote, his natural position. Although all of his senior football bar that game has been played at fullback, essentially. So
yeah,
I don't know. Good lineup. Obviously, Ruta couldn't play. He's cup tied, isn't he, for the Wolves game? So it's good to see him start. Yeah, I mean, good lineup. I don't think I'd really have tweaked anything. I don't think Kadioglu's quite ready for a start yet. Again, you don't want to rush Weaver back. Say Welbeck's had a great start to the year, so you don't really want to displace him. It's just kind of Minte, Adingra, wasn't it? I mean, Minte hadn't been great against Ipswich, I didn't think. Adingra was then very good against Wolves, so the natural thing is, give him a go. But he was, It's about the best lineup you put.
Yeah. Stephen in the chat, we talk about Matt O'Reilly, of course, who's injured, and we don't know when that ETA return is, but he mentions as Jack Inshelwood turned into the Pascal Gross of the team. We rave about Ferguson, we rave about Enciso's wonder goals. We've been raving about Adingra lately with all of his super sub appearances, Baleba, understandably as well. But Jack is, again, only 19, played all of his career currently, professionally wise, at fullback, which is not his actual position. And then plays in his actual position yesterday and scores a goal. And we'll talk about match ratings at the end, but like he's up there as one of the best performances on the pitch yesterday. What do you think is the future for Jack Hinshelwood? Because he's going really very much under the radar, isn't he? But he's a player that you would never have even begin to think would be in the picture like a year and a half ago. And yet all of the injuries, he is very much the definition of like next man up who took that opportunity and like turned the brass ring into gold, right? Like he's done unbelievable things with it. What's next for him? Because we've got Weaver, we've got Matt O'Reilly, we've got Carlos Baleba, who is also he is this season's brass to gold, right? He's been unbelievable so far. What is Jack Hinshelwood's role in this team?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because I've not been negative about him, but he always surprises me every time. Because when I go, right, when everybody's fit, right, you got no injuries at all, you can make quite a convincing case for him not being in the matchday squad. Which, given everything you've just said and the important goals he scored last year, I mean, he scored the winner against Bournemouth, didn't he? Scored against Palace. Obviously, this year he scored yesterday. So he's not someone who's been making up the numbers when he's been playing. And he's played a lot of football. He was one of those players where everyone else was seemingly injured and he was having to play basically every game. So it feels really harsh to say you could make a case for him not being in the matchday squad. But you could. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's probably the case that we're never going to have everybody fit at the same time because that's just, it's just how life works. So I think he is going to be, I think Pascal Gross is probably a very good description. I think he is going to be the person that fills in wherever we need him. And we've seen fullback's been a perennial issue. I know we've signed Kadioglu. We're not quite sure where he's going to end up playing. I mean, I'm told from what you can see, left back seems to be his preferred position. But then if Purvis is coming back fully fit and firing, then I can't see us having to make a decision between Kadioglu and Purvis. We're going to fit one of them in somewhere else. So he may end up being just a hybrid player that is on the bench a lot. I don't know. It's really difficult because he's coming through and like you can't knock anything really. I mean, you could say he's pretty short for a fullback, but he's scored a hell of a lot of headers for someone who's not that tall.
He's got a hell of a header on him, hasn't he?
Yeah, he really has. I mean, he scored, I think his Bournemouth winner last year was a headed goal. He then scored a really good goal against Spurs, which I've just remembered right now. It wasn't a header, but he absolutely hammered it.
Great goal, yeah.
And again, that was drifting in from fullback. We've seen teams kind of try and target him at fullback this year already. Ipswich did it they were doing constant long diagonal balls to try and catch him out.
Did the same thing at Everton, didn't they? Of course, with Jack Harrison, who got so many openings and did absolutely nothing with any of them, which about sums up Everton's season so far, really. But yeah,
so it's a very long way of me saying I'm not quite sure. I mean, he's one of those players that's like he's really nice to have in the squad. But I'm not quite sure when everyone's fit, pedigree, where does he fit? I mean, we know he's above Moda, right? Like, kind of central.
And Milner, I would think. I would honestly say, and Milner too, just on reliability alone. Yeah. Like he's going to have an opportunity here where he's going to cruise into that position. And I mean, honestly, possibly Ayari too, right? Like, I hate it because I love Ayari, but if we're looking at loaning him out and he was very close to already going out, like you would assume that he's probably in that conversation of being out. So 13 minutes in then, unlucky for Salmon it was for us yesterday, live in front of the Sky cameras. The referee decided to make the game all about him, Mr. Rob Jones. It's that you've had a bad refereeing performance when both teams hate you at the end of the final whistle. That is always like the conclusion where you think like when the Forest fans are coming out and all they're talking about is they think the ref like took over the game and ruined it, and the Albion fans feel the same. Like it's you've had a stinker. And it started off very early, obviously 13 minutes in with Chris Wood and the penalty shout. I've watched it back a few times. When I watched it in real time, I thought there's no chance. Watching it back in slow-mo and all the angles that you get, I still think it's one of the softest penalties I've ever seen. Like, he's absolutely, like, there's just, the contact is almost initiated by Hudson-Odoi more than Baleba than anything else. And there's no kind of like foot-to-foot contact. There's no like tripping of the, like, there's nothing there to me to give that as a penalty. And it's one of those ones where I can see why VAR wouldn't overturn it with the clear and obvious stuff, because if you're being incredibly sensitive, like, you could blow. Like, I don't know. Like, it was one of the softest pens I've ever seen. Like, what did you think of that? Because for me, like, I thought that was ridiculous to give that, especially so early too, right there. And unfortunately, it really did set the tone for what Rob Jones was going to do throughout the rest of the football match.
It looked very, very soft. It looked very, very soft. It just looked like one of those kind of classics, like coming together of two players, really. They were both going for the ball, and I didn't see anything in there. And with you, it's kind of annoying that you go, it's never going to be overturned, because it's not that clear, and like, it's not kind of not that clear. It's not like a dive, right?
Right.
I mean, there's this kind of contact. That's the horrible thing. You go, there's contact, but it's so soft. It's just.
I'm watching it back now, and he's not even behind him. He's side to side with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just it's a dreadful decision. And even looking at his angle, like, I was watching a match today, you can kind of see the referee's angle of it, and I don't like looking from his angle. You go, I don't know what he's seen. It's kind of it was almost like a double. There's like almost like a double movement, almost like it's like he almost loses his balance after the initial kind of coming together, but not because of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just a baffling.
It's bizarre. I'm watching it again. I still just don't understand. Chris Wood slots the ball away for a penalty. Obviously, he's a superb penalty taker. I love Bart, but I don't think he was always going to stand much of a chance against Chris Wood, who is one of the better penalty takers in the Premier League by quite some distance. And from then on, it became a case of very much just one team quite happy to sit in their final third for long stretches of football and hit us on the break as and when possible. And frankly, it worked for them, right? Because it ended up with both of us on around about the same XG, taking out the penalty XG. So they generated enough chances to be worthy of a goal, right? But the penalty was a bit of a scam. Baleba booked, Welbeck booked for frustration beyond belief at this point. Towards half-time, frustration was really starting to bubble over. And up steps Jan-Paul van Heck when we needed a man to put in a killer ball. Obviously. And there was Jack Hinchelwood, just totally unmarked. He's just done exactly what you mentioned and drifted in from fullback, except he's done it from centre midfield this time. And I assume that's exactly the sort of thing that Herzl hopes Matt O'Reilly's going to do in the future too, isn't it? Because he just drifted in, and for a lad that is of such average height, size, weight, shape, the boy's got a hell of a header on him, hasn't he?
Really has. It's got so much power on it, and it's just and I've seen a few Forest fans saying Sells should have saved it, but it's a different. I mean, he's got so much power on it. I know it's gone close to the goalkeeper, but it's a really good header.
I think they're being a bit harsh to Sells there, because I mean, I'm looking at it here, and like he's gone back across goal, and it's hit the corner of the net. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's like you can see he's got. I mean, I think he's gotten. It's a good effort to get as close to it as he did. I think it's just a really good header.
Yeah,
like you said, it's whipped in. It's a really good cross with pace. He's got really good connection on it, and he's put it basically where you'd want any player to put a header in that situation.
Yeah,
it's just a really good finish.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. I thought he was just an unbelievable finish. And I mean, what more can you ask for, right? But from that point onwards, Forest had well, one shot between the penalty and halftime, which kind of tells you how it happened. And it was interesting that yesterday was the first time Hertzler had been behind as a Brighton Hove Albion football manager. Like he'd never been behind. And there was a guy in front of me, and he was like, "Now we'll see what Hertzler ball's about. Like now we'll see what Fabian's about." Inevitably, right on halftime, Mitoma, who is seemingly sneaking back to next as well, his cut-ins the last couple of games has been brutal, and yesterday he just caused Aina, whatever his name is, just an absolute brutal time at right back. Free kick, very dangerous free kick on the edge of the area, and up steps the obvious free kick taker, Danny Welbeck. Like, and just absolutely buries it into the corner of the net right before half time to go from 1-0 down to 2-1. Unbelievable. Like,
how annoyed are you
that was.
If you're Lewis Dunk, by the way, how annoyed are you here? Like, Danny Welbeck's gone, give me a go, right? I'll do this. And it's just like, I think they said it was something like, I think they said in his Premier League career, he's only taken like less than 5 direct free kicks in his Premier League career.
Well, it's funny though, isn't it? Because the goal he scored and the position he scored it from and the style of strike it was, we've actually seen him score quite a few like that in the blue and white stripes, like from open play.
Yeah.
So like logically, like if he's got a free hit at it, like he should be able to do that relatively often because we've watched him do it in harder positions before with people rushing him and all that sort of stuff. Like it makes sense, but I don't think anyone saw it coming. And I, for one, on your comment, I, for one, am glad that the dunk experiment has been allowed to go away. Like, I think he's had one chance this year.
Ipswich,
and he's smashed the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, he had one at Ipswich. I mean, it's a really good free kick. Like, again, when you see the angle from behind it, he's put it right in the corner. I mean, even though the keeper's not moved, but even if the keeper dives full length, he's getting nowhere near that. They said it was only our 4th direct free kick we've scored in 7 and a bit seasons in the Premier League, all by different players as well. All by different players. So Lewis Dunk has got as many goals from direct free kicks as Pascal Gross got. It's like,
good God.
Anyway,
that's insane. Stephen in the chat, we never mentioned Hinchell would save off the line against Wolves.
Yeah, we didn't.
Which is a really good point.
Really good. Yeah,
he can do it all. Like, he really can do it all. He's so responsible going forward and back. It's insane. Do we think Welbeck was miffed at getting booked? Welbeck looked miffed for almost the entire game. I think my frustrations about that refereeing performance were mirrored by Danny Welbeck's, which usually means I'm not overreacting. Because Danny Welbeck is one of the most level-headed footballers on the pitch in almost any game, I find. Like, he's a bit of a, like, he's going to give it just like everybody else. But, like, in terms of getting booked for dissent, like, that's not a Danny Welbeck thing. Like, that's not something that happens often. And he looked annoyed for basically the whole game. So generally, if he's annoyed, I feel like we've got a good enough right to think the ref's not doing great, given how much football Danny Welbeck has played in his career. But going in at half-time, 2-1 up, the Forest fans were just absolutely routed. Like, they went from mouthing off so much to just being totally silent for basically the rest of the game. And a triple sub at half-time for Forest, and then another one about 14 minutes later. So they'd made 4 subs within 59 minutes, Forest, and didn't really do much, did it?
No. I mean, it didn't. I thought I'd comfortable. And as soon as we were 2-1 at half time, I was dangerously comfortable, right, with this. I was like, we've weathered the storm, like, rough penalty shout, all of that. We've looked good. We've kind of come in at 2-1. Like, you just take those opportunities. You think, okay, fine. Today is turned around, right? It's just one of those days. And then it became a little bit like the Ipswich game in that, I think we had something like 70 over the course of the game. We had like 71% possession. And it just came like that. It just couldn't score. And it was for the Ipswich game when I was there, I sat the guy that I was sitting next door to. It's the same in any game, but that Ipswich game felt like we just needed a goal, right? It's one of those games you go, yeah, we just need a goal. I know you need that in every game, but there are certain games where you kind of need it more just because of the way that it's going. And yesterday was the same thing. It just needed a third goal to kill it off. Because as we've talked about, given how vulnerable we are on the break and how good Forest are on the break, I mean, that was before the game yesterday. One of the pieces, I think it was on the Sky Sports website, basically called out the fact that Forest's biggest danger to us was them on the counter-attack. So when you combine their ability on the counter-attack with our slightly shaky midfield position, like that was always going to be a danger. Like even against Wolves, we had that 10-15 minute period in the second half where we just allowed them to counter-attack constantly for about 10 or 15 minutes. So it was going to happen, right? Logic and what we've seen was it was going to present them with some opportunities on the counter-attack. So we needed a third goal, and obviously we didn't get it.
Yeah, and obviously let ourselves down on 70 minutes. And for me, I think the key moment here that led to this goal, because if you watch it back, the defending is just wildly irresponsible from the centre halves. They're so high, and all it took was 2 passes to unlock the defence and put 2 players in, 1-on-1 against the goalkeeper. Well, 2-on-1 against the goalkeeper, obviously, for them to slot away. Verbruggen had no chance. And for me, I think the biggest thing here that affected this move was the Baleba off the substitution just 6 minutes before the goal. It looked like we hadn't fell into a rhythm yet of responsibilities and coverage, and it showed because Baleba has been bailing them out now for a little bit with the pace that he displays, and he's so dynamic. And Weaver had only just come into the game, and we were dictating the pace, we were dictating the play, and I think it was a horrible moment because it was so avoidable as well, wasn't it? Like it was just piss poor defending all over.
Really defending again, and we've been vulnerable to that, as we said, under De Zerbi as well.
Yeah, and Potter, really.
We've been vulnerable. I said, for years we've not been able to defend solidly like that. And it's because I don't know whether there's a certain element of like hubris to it that we think because we're so, in theory, we should be so good in attack. I don't know whether there's a reliance on, okay, we're going to score. I mean, like, we're going to have that much possession. We've got this attacking talent. We're going to score. And you kind of put your eggs in that basket. But we know that I mean, you had those under Potter and then latter days De Zerbi. We went back to that kind of Potter ball, trying to walk the ball into the back of the net. And, it's not always going to work. So I don't know whether we've kind of swung a little bit too much towards attack. It's early days. Like I said, he's not really had a chance to properly bed in yet. We don't really know what his preferred formation is going to be. I mean, he keeps telling us he doesn't like formations. So maybe there isn't a preferred formation. It's still early days, but that is definitely something that cannot be allowed to carry on.
No, not at all.
If we're going to get anywhere this year, I mean, I'm not suggesting we're going to be going down, but, if we're actually going to push into the top half of the table and go into the latter stages of cup competitions, that has to change, that element of it. Even if it doesn't change, we have to get better at those scenarios. Okay, fine, you can have a high line like that, but it involves needing to have someone sitting in defensive midfield who is quick enough, or having, whoever else. I mean, we've seen Minte when he's still not the best at tracking back. It's great going forward. So again, it involves at the moment, you're going to have more energy when we lose the ball. Which obviously but that's...
We saw Stephen in the chat. Stephen in the chat notes Mitoma yesterday was excellent for tracking back. Made a spectacular defensive tackle right in front of me in that end of that first half. So that's obviously something that they need to do. But Adingra and Minte have both never been the best tracking back. So playing on that right wing, they're going to have to figure it out, aren't they? Do you foresee? It feels inevitable to me that sooner or later, with the pace issues that we have, sooner or later you're going to see both Estepinian on the left, Kadioglu on the right, and Baleba being a mainstay in that midfield. Don't you think? Just to be able to bail out the two slower centre backs.
You just need that pace.
Because I think with Kadioglu on yesterday instead at right back, instead of Veltman, looking back at just watching it again, like I think he probably has the pace to catch up to that. And if Balaba's still on the pitch, he's probably got the pace to catch up with the goal scorer. So like even if they end up committing a foul and getting themselves sent off, like it's better than conceding a goal, isn't it? Like both of them are likely to be able to do that. Although from then going forward, Forest didn't have a single shot on goal after that. They presented absolutely nothing, even the 10 minutes where they had 11 men on the pitch. As soon as they scored that equaliser, it was very much a case of we are now playing for a point and we'll defend with our lives. Pedro breaks away from a rare set piece that they'd gotten. And Morgan Gibbs-White, captain, leader, inspiration, fouls, quite poor tackle. And it's wild to me that we're having to talk about the fact that this is like there's even any controversy with this. But the ref once again can't help but make himself look like a clown. He gives nothing initially, just great tackle, mate. Play on, like no foul. Until his fourth official consults with him, which is, I understand the days of VAR may be confusing to some people, but for those listening, that's something that's happened for many, many years. It's very much a part of the game, and the fourth official can absolutely provide context, information, whatever they need to the referee to help them come to a decision. That's absolutely letter of the law, normal thing. And prior to VAR, you would see it every 2 or 3 weeks where the fourth official and the ref would consult in a random game, right? Like not necessarily you'd see it maybe 2 or 3 times a season in a Brighton game, but you would see it once every 2 or 3 weeks in the Premier League all the time. Like, so it's not rare. It's definitely stopped a lot since VAR got involved. But for this one in particular, it's right in front of him. Hertzler lost his absolute shit. Nuno lost his shit. Both ended up being red carded as well. There's no question, right? That it feels like the only people that seem to be angry about this decision to send him off are the Forest fans, right? And
yeah,
even
I thought it's enough. I've seen tackles like that given as a straight red for the follow through. I mean, it's one of those ones. It's not a guaranteed red, but there's absolutely no argument on earth that that's not a yellow card, right?
Very much.
And people fall into this like, I hate it. People fall into this like they contextualize it on the basis of whether someone's already been booked, and that like I hate that. You go, why does it matter? Like it's like if it's a yellow card, it's a yellow card. Like I genuinely blow. Like I can't even get my words out because I just don't understand like why anyone's ever like you see it differently because it's a second yellow. It's almost like like the burden of proof for a second yellow should be higher than if it was a first yellow. It's like it's objectively it's nonsense. It's a yellow. I mean, like it's a yellow card.
I agree. Absolutely, totally agree with you. And so obviously 2-2 in the end, draw. 6 minutes of added time were given for this football game, and the referee blew up on exactly 6 minutes. I, being the petty person I am, counted. The football was in play for just over 2 minutes of those 6 minutes. And he blew up at 6 minutes while we were on the attack with a throw-in. And we're planning a long throw. So we were like essentially a set piece. And he blew up exactly as soon as the Amex clock hit 9:06, he blew up.
Well, because we basically given us a corner, hadn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
A corner, and then he blew like.
And I think there may well have been. I mean, I would hazard to guess that like it was probably 3 to 4 minutes of football didn't get played during the red card.
Yeah.
And then obviously you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like you've had roughly like 7 subs made, which is it's impossible to only be 6 as it is. No. The fact that he then blew up prior to like at bang on 6 is just astonishing.
You wait for a corner, like I mean, convention is like if you've just given a corner or a free kick, like you wait for that to play out. You don't wait for phase after phase after phase. But if you've literally just blown for a free kick or a corner, you let them take the corner. I said that Ipswich blew my mind as well. That was they gave 3 minutes of added on time for that. Yeah, when it's like that should have been again like 6 or 7, and they seem to have rode it back because I know like was it last season, beginning of last season or the season before we were routinely getting like 10 and 11 minutes added on. And they now seem to have like rode back completely the other way. And they're now hardly giving anything.
Well, the wild thing is they said that they were going to go back to being better about that. And for the first week of the season, they gave loads of added time everywhere. And then after literally 1 week, and then back to week 2, they're back at it. Like, it's immediately just like, nah, like, give the bare minimum, blow up immediately at the end of that bare minimum that we've given, and go home. It's baffling to me. And I mean, to me, like, I mentioned it to you guys in the chat. I said it to you guys in the chat. It was, to me, it's 4 points drop this week. Like, but for me, like, Ipswich was our own fault. Like, we were more than good enough to unlock them. Hertzler said the same. They all know the same, really. They know they were good enough to beat Ipswich, and they just didn't. They didn't put their chances away.
It was that ridiculous triple save as well.
That's true. Yeah. That was unbelievable. Yeah.
Standard, like, visiting goalkeeper has his one good game of the season at the Amex, right? Like, James
it is astonishing.
Trafford did it last season for Burnley.
Yeah.
Again, suddenly became like, prime like Taffarel for like an afternoon.
Yeah, it's mental the consistency that they managed to get at the Amex. I don't know what it is, but I mean, for me, Ipswich was our own fault. Like, we were good enough to beat them. We didn't. Yesterday was frustration on a different level because we were good enough to beat them. And I think if the ref had been... To me, every game this season, the ref has been quite boring and anonymous, which is good. That's a great thing. Like, neither way, like, right? Because we did, like, to me, everybody lost their shit about the Arsenal thing, but like, it was a second yellow. Like, it was.
Yeah, it was.
His mess up was not booking the other two when Pedro and Saka booted the ball away both times. Like, both of those should have been booked too. But overall, like, his performance was actually quite boring, like non-committal, other than that one moment. And then obviously Ipswich and Everton, again, like, you barely remembered he was on the pitch, even though he gave that red for Ashley Young. It was as clear-cut a red as you'd get, right? But for this one, like, it felt like it was due, wasn't it? Because we've had such, like, non-incidental refereeing performances throughout, whether we've won or lost or drew. Like, we've had nothing really going on. So it's inevitable that Rob Jones was going to come down to the Amex and see his own name in lights. And to me, that is the worst part about it for me, because it was never a pen, which influenced that. The second goal they got came from a free kick that was laughably not a free kick. Danny Welbeck, like, he literally did every single thing possible to avoid contact on that free kick that was given that led to the goal. And the ref blow it up is just astonishing. And then obviously just his poor mismanagement of the game all the way through. Like, I thought it was just a shocker. And I'm not quite sure. I've not watched any of Forest games this season, but I don't know how they are where they are, because dark arts can only get you so far.
Yeah, they've not conceded a goal. They've not conceded a goal away from home apparently before yesterday. I mean,
and they are phenomenal.
Is that their third away game? I guess probably. I mean, they've been to Liverpool. Obviously, went to Anfield last week. They've been
their third. Yeah,
they must have had one somewhere else. But yeah, hadn't conceded a goal. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, not that many teams go to Anfield and win. I know it's early days of Slot, but still, not that many teams go and win at Anfield. So, I mean, they're obviously, on paper, they look pretty good. I mean, when you got Alanga on one side, Hudson-Odoi on the other, that's good. You know, like, a lot of
absolutely
have that. Chris Wood is an annoyingly good striker. We know he's got that knack of, bullying defenders, being in the right place at the right time. Obviously missing, simple one-on-ones, but granted. And then you look at Morgan Gibbs-White is another really good player. They've got Murillo is a good, they've got it's a solid team. So I think it's a good point, but it's still, it's another one of those games. It sort of illustrates how far we've come, that we look back on these games and we go, that's disappointing.
Yeah, I think so. And for me, like, I think the idea of relegation is very much out of the picture already, albeit 5 games. I've seen enough to know that Hertzler is certainly not another Huppier, and we're fine. Like, we're going to be all right, regardless. But it just makes it fun. Like, I used to pray for times where we could consider ourselves a boring mid-table Premier League club 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? Like, literally, like, dreamland pray. And now I'm like, oh, like, I know we're capable of a little bit more. And I think it will be interesting because Chelsea next, and then Spurs and Newcastle as well. Like, these are teams that are not going to pack the box, right? Like, there was 2 or 3 times yesterday alone in the second half where we really could have scored 2 or 3 if they didn't have 7 men in the box, even when they had 11 on the pitch. And that's not something you'll see against these bigger sides because they're not going to give you that respect. So it will be interesting. Who was your man of the match yesterday for the Forest game, though?
It's difficult. I mean, it's one of those frustrating ones. You go, Baleba was excellent. I mean, but he's becoming excellent. So it's almost like you have to look at it in those terms and go, occasionally you give a man of the match out because a player has played, unusually well, right? And that's the reason why. His standard now is becoming like, it's not quite yet. It's kind of like Caicedo, right? You're just used to the fact that he's just going to do ridiculous things every game. And you're kind of like, okay, fine. He's tackled someone from that position and won the ball. All right. Like, you're just going to become used to that. So he was really good. Hinshelwood was right up there, like we've talked about earlier. His first game in central midfield for a while, scores a goal, kind of pulls us back into the game. And Mitoma was really good. I mean, like, he was unlucky not to score or lay on some more because I thought he was excellent. Probably go for Mitoma, I think, actually, just because he terrorized them and he just looked like he was happy to take players on. In the Ipswich game, he just looked a bit tentative, and his second touch was a tackle most of the time.
The purpose effect?
Purpose might well be. I mean, it might well be having his mate, knowing that he's got a bit of cover there and he doesn't have to worry about, losing the ball and then you're in trouble. I don't know. But, they all look good. I mean, it's one of those games where probably most of the team were a kind of, 6, 7, 8 out of 10. There's no one really that stands out as having been well above everybody else or well below everybody else. No one really made a particular error. I mean, the defensive lapse for their equaliser was kind of team-wide, really.
Yeah, it really
kind of knocking a point off everybody rather than anyone in particular. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very difficult to pick one who was miles above everybody else. What about you?
Hinch for me, Hinshelwood. He plays in his preferred position, and I thought he was excellent playing the more attacking role, but next to Baleba. Obviously, Baleba was phenomenal. His defensive contributions were just, I think he was basically number one on everything. Number one on tackles, number one on interceptions, and just did an excellent job all round. But Hinshelwood, I thought, was excellent as well. Got the goal, 2 key passes, which is equal to Mitoma. 91.7% pass accuracy in the middle of the park as well, against a team that, as you said, hadn't even conceded away from home yet, and really caused problems for Liverpool. I thought he was excellent, and I'm happy to see him continuing to get games because I agree with you. You could easily argue on another day that with a fully fit squad, he's not even 18 worthy. Like, it's crazy. I'd love to hear from listeners. What do you think is the future of Jack Hinshelwood? Like, is he 11 worthy every game? Like, are you starting him every week, like wherever it has to be? Do you totally disagree? And that he's definitely a sub player at best, like worst? Or like, do you agree with us that like on a picture perfect squad day, like there could be an argument for him not even being in there?
I think he'll probably get in on the basis of his versatility.
He should, yeah, probably.
Squad wise, he'll get on the basis of his versatility. But then again, you've got Kadioglu, who can play in 3 or 4 positions. We've got Gruder, who can apparently play in 2 or 3 positions. He's not the only Mr. Versatile. You've got Matt O'Reilly, who can play in basically all the way through that midfield spine from, DM all the way through to attacking midfielder. So he's not the only one who is versatile like that. So I don't know. It's really interesting. So, I mean, I guess, he's got the opportunity. The ball's in his court, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, every time he gets an opportunity, then he needs to show it, which is a fantastic position for the team to have all these players who, they're going to have to, you can't have a bad game these days, right?
Agreed.
It's going to be, not to suggest he's going to be chopping and changing all the time, but, he's got the depth to be able to, if someone's not consistently not pulling up trees, then there's somebody else who's going to be wanting their place, which is what you want.
Agreed. We are 5 games in, and we have 6 teams without a win in the Premier League still, which is quite a lot. I was looking back, and I've not been able to find one yet over the last couple of seasons where it's took 5 games. Like, there's that many winless teams. We finally got the last team with a 0-point total to get off the mark. Everton against Leicester this week. Away at the King Power. Is it the King Power anymore? I don't know.
I don't know what they call it these days.
But they snatched a draw from Leicester, who are 3 points better off. 3 draws, no wins either. Palace, Ipswich, Southampton, Wolves, all part of that group with no wins yet. Glasner supposed to be the next greatest manager to ever grace the earth after the end of that season. Very much a sophomore slump this year, isn't it? Like, they look absolutely dog shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think it said it's their worst start to a Premier League season since De Boer. So they are now just, De Boering at the moment. So I don't know how long he's gonna last. I mean, they sold a lot of players. That's the problem.
And they didn't really do much in the transfer market to bring in better options, and that is the Palace way.
It's even stuff like they let Ayew go to Leicester, and Edward went to Leicester as well, didn't he? Both of them went to Leicester, which seems like, I know neither of them are like, they're not going to score like 20, 25 goals a season, but they're both like experienced players. I mean, Ayew's scored against us, hasn't he? At least a couple of times, I think. I mean, they're experienced like Premier League players who you don't want to be necessarily shipping out unless you've got someone experienced coming in to replace them, which they haven't done. And that feels like you've just strengthened a relegation rival. Like,
I mean, I can only assume is that like they did not feel that they were on that level. I assume that they let players like that go in the same way that we started letting players go like 2 or 3 years ago, where we felt we had evolved from a relegation candidate. Yeah. I feel like they must have made that same belief and decision to get rid of those players like Ayew that can win you 6 points a season and could be crucial, like with like a last minute scumbag goal, right? Like that's the Ayew way. Like, and I have to assume that that's their mentality, that like we aren't part of that bracket of teams anymore, so we don't need to have that bracket of players. We're going to evolve to the next level and become a Brighton or West Ham, and I want to say Newcastle, but like, spending wise, they should be far higher, but like they're still very much part of that group as well. Arrogance, essentially. Like, I think they just they made the arrogant decision without any of the data to back it, which is not what teams like Brighton have done. And teams like Brentford have done, right? They've used the data to go, we still aren't clear of the relegation thing. We don't get rid of X and Y because we need them as the experienced heads in this league because it can flip and turn on a dime. We're seeing that happen now, and Brentford are, they're always going to be there or thereabouts at the moment because they're just on and off, aren't they? But it's a surprise to me to see how poorly.
Very dangerous thing. I mean, the only slightly irritating thing, if you look at the top half of the table, the top 6 is already probably the teams that will finish in the top 6. And it normally takes a little bit longer for things to settle into that pattern. But you normally see someone like having last season it was us, we won like 5 out of 6 or something, didn't we? First 5 or something. So, there's normally like a little bit of time it takes, but already, it's Man City, Liverpool, Villa, Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle in that order, which is probably going to be the top 6 already after 5 games.
Yeah, well, I mean, we go to Chelsea next, don't we? At the Bridge as well, so it's not going to be an easy one for them. They lost to Manchester City at home, of course, opening game of the season, and only took a point against Palace. I think that's Palace's only point of the season so far. No, they've took a couple. But yeah, like they're still a strange team, Chelsea. They're not out of the woods just yet of being a bit of a meme team. They have beat Bournemouth and West Ham away from home. West Ham was very convincing, but again, West Ham are like, who the hell are West Ham these days? Like, 14th place, 1 win, 1 draw, 3 losses. Like they don't seem to have much of an identity either. And their win came against the dismal Crystal Palace. So it's going to be interesting to see how this league shakes up, because I mean, we get a couple of good results back to back, and Chelsea, Newcastle firmly drop out of that top 6, right? And like we're back up there. And Forest again, they're still there, and they have to play Fulham at home next, who are also playing quite well. It's a really big. Outside of your top grouping, which seems to be Liverpool, Arsenal, and City already. They seem to be definitely the 3 that will pull away. I think the rest of it, like, you're only a few results away from being all over the place, like all of them. And I have a feeling that a lot of it may well shape up like that as the season goes on beyond the first 5 games, which is where everything's so interchangeable. It has the appearance of a very close, almost championship-esque league.
Yeah, it does. Year. It's nice. Because I still don't know what, I mean, you look at the bottom of the table and you go, at the moment it's Wolves, Everton, Southampton in there, but you got Ipswich, who I mean, they tried hard. I don't see where they're going to get the goals from to stay up.
No.
And if they go and get someone in January who's going to have a storming second half of the season, I just don't see where the goals are coming from for them. So I don't know. I mean, anyone up to really West Ham could just have a horrendous season. You think they're probably all right, but that bottom 6, don't know. Any combination of that bottom 6 could go down.
Which is crazy, right? Because we thought it was so obvious that it would be a bottom 4, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're promoted 3 in Everton, right? That was your assumption, and yet Wolves look atrocious.
They really do. They really. Awful. I know they let Neto go, didn't they? I mean, they've not really signed anyone of note, and they've let. I mean, Neto wasn't the most consistent, but he was clearly... And
he was injured a lot too, right? So, like, it shouldn't be enough to cause the meltdown it has, but...
No. And we thought, Palace, we were promised that this was the year they were going for top 4, top 6. So, I mean, that's a surprise to see there's an additional number next to their league position, which wasn't what we were told was happening this year. So...
Yeah, it's very strange. To be fair, I didn't think it would happen either, to be honest. Like, I thought that Palace would be like a 11th, 12th, 10th, 9th team.
Yeah.
And if they have a good run, they could go higher. But like, no, it's just they're shocking. All right, next week, Saturday the 28th of September, 3:00 kickoff. Away at Chelsea. I didn't get tickets for that because I'm not high enough tier, which is annoying. But we will be here next Sunday at the usual time to cover that one. And then the following weekend is Spurs at home. So we'll cover that as well. So don't forget Carabao Cup draw midweek, 2 days away. So keep an eye on that, guys, because that will be one that we'll definitely want to keep an eye on if we want to make a run at one of these cups this year. And we will be back next weekend. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Have a good rest of your week, guys.